The news has slowed down, the betting odds have shifted, and the lack of a bidding war for Kevin Durant on the open market has led a lot of NBA fans to believe KD might end up staying with the Brooklyn Nets heading into next season. However, I disagree with this take substantially. In this video, I'm going to break down why it's almost a certainty Kevin Durant will be moved from the Brooklyn Nets this offseason. So without further ado, let's dive straight into it. Hello everybody, Ben Rogers here, the Raptors Digest, breaking down why Kevin Durant will be moved this offseason in this video. And as everyone knows, the Raptors are on the quest for Kevin Durant, and the Raptors Digest, we're covering it all. Even though this video isn't necessarily just about the Toronto Raptors, more so about the KD situation in general. But if you want to join us on this quest, subscribe to the channel, like the video, helps us out big time. But in this video, I'm sort of combating a narrative I'm seeing rise up on the Twitter spheres, the Reddit spheres, not just amongst the Raptors fans, but amongst the NBA fandom in general, because a lot of people are thinking KD will now stay with the Brooklyn Nets. Now, the first reason why people are believing this is because the Nets are pushing some takes. They're making their stance felt, their public stance known, that say, hey, we could keep Kevin Durant if we're not getting the deal we want. Right? If no one's going to up their offers, if no one's going to up their bids, then we'll just keep our disgruntled superstar and see if he can, call his bluff, see if he actually doesn't play. And I get why, as a fan of the league, seeing those reports might be, okay, maybe that's an actual route of course of action, because we've seen that stance get taken by some trade requests in the past, even how unlikely it is. Kobe Bryant demanded a trade back in late 2000s. He ended up winning a couple championships with the LA after, right? So that's a big one that everyone's pointing back to. Even last season, Ben Simmons requested a trade, and it wasn't until all the way to the trade deadline did a deal ended up getting done. And people say, well, KD likes basketball too much to actually sit out. So why wouldn't the Brooklyn Nets call his bluff? And in this video, I'm going to break down why that is. Now, the first reason that I think it's a safe bet to predict Kevin Durant will be moving on from the Brooklyn Nets, and just this on its own makes it a safe bet, not the other things I'm going to break into, is superstars have so much power in this NBA today to sort of determine where they're going to go, right? And if they sort of set a narrative about a franchise, the impact that has on agents, right? Kevin Durant, a player of that magnitude, you sort of disrespect him as an organization, you don't let him do what he wants to do, that tarnishes your reputation as a sort of organization when trying to attract other free agents. And the Brooklyn Nets aren't like one of those minor franchises that don't really care how their free agent status is going to matter, right? The Nets are a destination in terms of free agent acquisition. So if a narrative goes around that their front office is actively going to sabotage, one of their star players' sort of situations, the end of their careers, that could be a bad look. And we constantly see that happen with organizations, like a team like Houston, who is maybe not the most glamorous free agent destination, but certainly one of the more attractive destinations for free agents out there. When James Harden requested a trade with 2 years left on his deal, they just let it happen. They moved on from him. They let it go. Obviously, James had to, he played a few games there for the Houston Rockets, sort of tanked a couple games, but he forced his way out of there. He forced his way out of Brooklyn midway through this season. They brought back, damaged goods and the young socialite, right? Stars just have that much power. So regardless of what makes this situation special for Kevin Durant, it's hard to bet against a superstar getting moved on, no matter what the front office is put down. The San Antonio Spurs front office said they're not moving on from Kawhi when that trade request sort of talked about. Steve Nash, midway through this season, was saying, we have no plans on trading James Harden. And then 2 days later, literally the organization, the Brooklyn Nets, right, the team Kevin Durant is on right now, 2 days before James Harden was traded, were saying publicly, their head coach was bold-faced lying to the media, saying, we have no intentions of trading James Harden. We aren't talking with anyone. No chance, 0% chance, right? So that's all just smoke. If stars want to get traded, they usually end up getting traded. Now, let's compare some of the examples that are being brought up that sort of contradict this point, right? The players that go against the grain. Because this KD situation is very unique, given the fact he has the 4 years left on his contract. The Nets still have a pretty solid, in theory, on paper roster there with the team. They made some win now moves, right? Why couldn't it be like a Kobe Bryant situation where the Nets say, no, you're playing with this team and all this stuff sort of happening? Now, recall a tweet that came out 2 days ago 2-3 days ago, I think at this point, from Jeannie Buss, talking about how she was in love with, loved Kobe Bryant as a star for the LA Lakers. He's the greatest all-time Laker. The love that the Lakers organization had for for Kobe Bryant. The Lakers ownership, the people at the heads of LA had zero desire to get rid of Kevin Durant, right? Ownership, they loved the star power down there on La La Land. They did not want to give up their star no matter how much he was asking out. And yes, they talked about some trades. The Bulls, there's rumors that the Luol Deng addition to the trade package kept that deal from going down. So it could have potentially happened, the deal that went down for Kobe Bryant, but inevitably didn't, even though it was very, very close. But ownership for LA just said, we really don't want to lose this guy. Now, Sean Marks, I'm sure, the GM of the Brooklyn Nets, does not want to trade Kevin Durant, does not want to trade a dollar piece for the 75 cents you usually get back for a star, the 4 quarters you end up getting back for a star, right? It's always good to have all your assets sort of into one player and then build around it. However, that's the GM. The owner of the Brooklyn Nets is done with this team. They are done, right? The LA Lakers with Kobe Bryant, they won 3 championships with him before. I know they lost Shaq and they were going through a little bit of a low spell, but there was a winning history there in LA with this star player. There's a second round, one playoff victory, right? One playoff series victory with this Kevin Durant era Brooklyn Nets. There's no history of winning, and the Nets owner Joe Tsai is done with this Brooklyn Nets team. There's tweets or liked tweets by Joe Tsai of KD slander, that he's going out there and just liking tweets. I think they're unliked at this point, but he got caught in 4K by the Twitter police, liking KD slander tweets out there on Twitter, being petty, doing all this stuff as the owner of the Brooklyn Nets. He's come out and said, rather than have what we've had, what we could potentially go into next season with, right? Rather than having that, I'd rather have a 45-win team. Rather have those Playboy Cardi Brooklyn Nets squads with all the memes, all the dances. I'd much rather, as Joe Tsai, as the owner, would rather have that sort of team construction, organizational sort of structure than the complete chaos that they've had over the past 2 years. Now, why is that important? Why is it important if ownership wants to get rid of this guy probably more than the guy wants to leave? Why is that? Because he is going to make that happen, right? If you have both forces trying to push their way out, I don't see a situation where that sort of, if one side sort of disgruntled and the other side makes up for it, if, KD was just mad and wanted to leave and then ownership was like, oh, well, KD, we love you, come back and all that sort of stuff. No, the ownership wants to break this, tear this thing down, this mess of a team that's been happening down there in Brooklyn, right, for the past few seasons. He wants to break it up, and the players want to break it up. So if both sides of that are occurring, right, if both sides of this want to occur, even the Sixers last season wanted to keep Ben Simmons. Daryl Morey was out there saying, we want Ben Simmons back. We couldn't get the value back for him and all that sort of stuff, right? They want to keep him until Ben sat out that entire season, right? If the ownership and the player wants to leave, it's just not going to work. It's not a healthy environment. Shams even said, there's a possibility of this occurring, of him staying on the Brooklyn Nets squad, but, it's going to be very toxic. And I think if your ownership is one goal, he's made it known, his stance, even in the post-season presser, right, when they got knocked out and swept by the playoffs, right, immediately after the season, if his whole provocative is, let's make this less toxic, I don't think the plan for doing that heading into next season is keeping that superstar around that doesn't want to be on your squad. So, this isn't a very Toronto Raptors centered video in this one, but it does impact it. And I think that's why I think even with all the reports that are going to come out, there's a huge, I think Windhorst said there's a huge, forget the specific quote, but there's a huge gap between what the Nets want and what's out there on the market right now for Kevin Durant. I don't think they're going to end up waiting. I think the rest of the league knows this, and that's why there's not a bidding war for Kevin Durant. He's too good of a player to not let that happen for. You know what I mean? Like, that's, insiders know. It's just public negotiation with other teams. Maybe get another pick out of teams and all that sort of stuff. So I wouldn't buy into KD end up staying with the Brooklyn Nets. Who knows? I could potentially be wrong, but I'm willing to go out on a limb and say certainty. I'm willing to throw out my guarantee on this podcast and say he will not be with the Brooklyn Nets next season. And if they do hold out in the wildest case scenario, I don't see it ever going past the trade deadline. But I'm willing to put my foot down and say a trade's going to occur before the start of this season. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about this take. I'm not passionate, but I believe this one heavily. I wanted to make a whole video on it. No sort of segments, no mixing it in with anything else. Just wanted to go on a little rant. But you guys are the best to make it this far. Check out the Instagram, the Twitter, the TikTok, all that cool stuff. Anyways, enough of me rambling. I'm signing off. Cheers.